Schumer is an optimistic person and perhaps his sunniest self in front of the delegation. I think privately, he and other Democrats would be a bit more cautious. The numbers help Democrats because a third of the Senate is up every 2 years. And so it changes. And this time, there are far more red states and seats Republicans have to defend than Democrats. It's like 24-10. And so the odds are in Democrats' favor.
New York Democrat Chuck Schumer is a confident guy these days, and there are experts on both sides of the aisle who believe he might not be all that wrong, to the dismay of Republicans everywhere, when Schumer says America could be on the cusp of an era where Democrats will dominate. That strikes right at the very soul of the right and conservatives everywhere. The snapback from the right will be how ridiculous that comment is, and it will never happen. Or fear that Schumer could be right and there is little that they can actually do about it. As for what is being said and felt around Washington at the ground level, only one man can accurately detail it all. Welcome back, fresh from his experiences in Cleveland and Philadelphia. Let's go to press. The Newsmax chief Washington correspondent, John Gizzi, joins us again. All right, John, back home. Let's get to it. Let's look at what's happening on the ground here. Chuck Schumer's big deal when he made these statements. This was in an interview with Politico where he said, "We're going to have a Democratic generation. Obama helped create it, but it's just where America's moving demographically, ideologically, and in every way. We'll have a mandate to get something done." I realize it's early, and again, this still hasn't settled in a lot around the Beltway, but do you get the sense, have you felt anything like this, a groundswell from Democrats and maybe a fear from Republicans?
No, not at all. What I felt is a lot of enthusiasm from Democrats that they can not only win the presidency, but perhaps win the Senate in a tie vote. That would take a net gain of 4 seats, with the Democratic vice president casting the deciding tie-breaking vote in the Senate. The House of Representatives, I have never met any Democrat, not even Ben Lujan, chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, whom I spent a morning with at the Christian Science Monitor press breakfast, who believes that the House can flip to Democratic. Now, perhaps after the next census in 2021 and the resulting redistricting of the House, maybe. But that's a big if and a long way off.
Here's the other side of that. There's also stories that the Republicans are growing very optimistic about their chance of saving the majority in the Senate. Because according to a number of stories that I've read, they've said, quote, Donald Trump has yet to become the albatross many Republicans feared. It looks like in Ohio, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, the candidates there running very strongly. Is there the sense, though, that this is still much more an anti-Hillary Clinton sentiment than it is a we've got to get behind Donald Trump and support him sentiment?
No, I'm not so certain about that. I think you could see a little bit of both. On the one hand, Hillary Clinton is held in minimum high regard by most Republicans and certainly most party activists. Donald Trump is a new face entirely. As I said, he's never held elective or appointive office, only the second person in history with those credentials nominated for the highest office in the land. Most people still don't know him beyond being the host of a reality TV series and a successful businessman. How he introduces himself, whether he recovers from some of the foibles that he's had, will determine that. In the meantime, I find a lot of enthusiasm for Republicans for their candidates for the Senate. I was in Pennsylvania, where admittedly the GOP is divided over the head of the ticket. They certainly are not over re-electing Senator Pat Toomey.
When you talk about Donald Trump introducing himself, what a perfect segue, because he has finally started spending some of that media money with a brand spanking new political ad that he is running in Ohio. Here we go.
You heard the speech. But behind the glitter lies this stark truth. In Hillary Clinton's America, things get worse. Under her dishonest plan, taxes keep rising, terrorism spreads. Washington insiders remain in control. Americans losing their jobs, homes, and hope. In Donald Trump's America, people are put back to work. Our families are safe. The American dream achievable again. Change that makes America great again.
So Donald Trump is out there. He is letting the people of Ohio know who he is and how he stands and what he stands for. But let's look at this, John. There's still people saying that he's got to have that sweep in these 3 big states Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, because without it, he has absolutely no chance. Do you get the sense, talking to people inside the Beltway, that he is making the right moves and that he can, even with all these foibles and everything else that's going on, that he can actually make some inroads here? Pennsylvania is going to be one of the toughest places of all.
It certainly is. Pennsylvania last went Republican for George H.W. Bush back in 1988. And political pundits have always described it as Lucy with the football from the Peanuts comic strips. It's a tantalizing sight for Republicans to go after. They work hard, but they always just miss, as Mitt Romney did last time, as John McCain did by a healthy margin in 2008. So you have that. On the other hand, I see polls in Wisconsin, I see polls in Michigan, and in my home state of Connecticut, where one survey conducted for a U.S. Senate candidate showed Donald Trump tied with Hillary Clinton, and I see a lot more in place than we are led to believe. How this plays out in the fall, whether this continues, remains to be seen.
I got about 2 minutes left, John. What's your takeaways from Cleveland and Philadelphia, the things you saw?
My takeaway is this: neither party is enamored with their nominee for president. If Democrats had their own way, they'd nominate Barack Obama for a third term, if that were constitutionally possible, or Joe Biden. Given the reception he received and the response from delegates, I think he would have some second thoughts about running again if he had it to do over. On the Republican side, there's always people who say we would have done better with, say, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker or Senator Rubio of Florida. But in the end, they've gone through the process, they've nominated their candidates, and I can tell you something. No one is walking away saying, we hope the other side wins. To them, that's like the closing scene from The Shining or another horror movie scripted by Stephen King.
I don't know why, but I could see Jack Nicholson's face right there. It would be the perfect mantra for one of these political parties. 30 seconds here. Which convention did you get the greater sense was in chaos?
Boy, that's a close call, Ed. I'm going to tell you something. It depends on what day of the week it was. When the Republicans had their opening night with Mrs. Trump's plagiarized comments from Mrs. Obama, yes, that seemed like a sense of chaos for at least the rest of the day. Then, as the platform was sculpted and the rules accepted, and then Donald Trump accepted nomination, it worked out just fine, albeit with some unscripted moments from Ted Cruz. On the Democratic side, it started off with the WikiLeaks suggesting that the Democratic National Committee had a finger on the scale in the nomination process.
Oh, yeah.
It ended with everyone, including Bernie Sanders, on board. So a little bit of chaos in both, but both ended on high notes.
And people, the chaos is just beginning. Don't forget, go to Newsmax.com, read all about John Gizzi's statements, comments, ideas, reports, everything as he looks inside the Beltway 24/7. John Gizzi, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us. We get to do it all again tomorrow. Rock on, true believers. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night and good luck.